The Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Extra Chapter. Return to Childhood. When he woke up, Xiāng Tóngxiù slowly flipped himself over, but he didn't feel the arm that was previously wrapped around his waist anymore. The morning light leaked in from the window and he used the sleeves of his inner robes to block the sunlight. With this single action, he found that his back and waist felt sore, and his arms had no strength to them. He perceived a slight tearing sensation somewhere on his lower body, as well as the peculiar feeling of something sticky that had dried up. Last night, he was tossed around all night, so he felt a little unwell this morning. Xiāng Tóngxiù found it strange that Luo Binghe wasn't up early to help him clean up and make breakfast. He hoarsely called out, "Binghe!" Nobody responded. Xiāng Tóngxiù felt even more confused, so he forced himself to open his eyes and look down. He saw a small head with soft, silky black hair. This little head looked delicate and cute. A natural blush spread across his white, tender cheeks and his eyelashes were dark, glossy, long, and slender. His eyes were shut tight and his lips were a light pink color. He was curled up into a ball, snuggled into his side like a kitty while resting his head on the back of his hand. Even though they were of different sizes, even though he looked to be only 5 or 6 years old, even though. There's no even though about it. Even if he shrank, Xiāng Tóngxiù could definitely recognize him at a glance. This is the male protagonist's face. He was so shocked that his voice changed. Luo Binghe. Originally, he wanted to pinch his arm to see if he could hurt himself awake, but when he got up, his bottom half throbbed from being sore and swollen. Xiāng Tóngxiù stiffly lay back down again. The curled-up Luo Binghe slowly woke up, his eyelashes trembling. Half of his face was red from lying on his hand. Squinting, he saw Xiāng Tóngxiù lying down in his messy clothes and reached out his arms towards him in a want-a-hug position as he called out, "Shizun." This sound was soft and sweet, seemingly tender enough that water would drip down any moment, so when he opened his mouth, he stiffened. The large eyes stared at the small eyes. They stared at each other, confused and with their minds in a mess for a while, before the two of them figured out what the situation was. In the first place, Luo Binghe was at a critical juncture in his cultivation, so logically speaking, he should have kept a clear mind, lessened his desires and kept pure in order to prevent any mishaps. It just so happened that last night, he wasn't able to hold back and messed around all night, until finally his demonic cultivation went haywire. Xiāng Tóngxiù didn't find it hard to accept at all, because in the original proud immortal demon way, this plot had happened as well. Of course, airplane shooting towards the sky's purpose for writing this scene wasn't to sell his cuteness or anything, but because the Luo Binghe that turned into a child could freely enter and exit into places that adult men could not. As to which places, it should be obvious. Moreover, a girl would lower her guard towards a small child, making it easier for him to make contact with her and capture her heart in one fell swoop. Since this plot point had never come about, Xiāng Tóngxiù thought that it was over with and wouldn't happen. Who knew that it was just delayed? Xiāng Tóngxiù helplessly asked, "How much core strength do you have left?" Luo Binghe replied, "Less than 1/10. His young, immature face looked solemn. Looking at him like this, it was as if he didn't want others to take it seriously and instead made them feel like the situation was very funny. So, Xiāng Tóngxiù ungraciously laughed. After laughing, he put on a serious face again and said, "Ah, you only have 1/10 left? That's fine. We can't stay in the demon world anymore." Luo Binghe had offended a good number of humans and demons alike. At a time like this, it was obviously better to run as far away and hide as deep as possible. Xiāng Tóngxiù's first thought was to grab Luo Binghe and run. After making up his mind, he was going to get dressed and get off the bed. Who knew that, as soon as he straightened his back, the muscles on his lower cheeks would twitch. In the past, once they were done, Luo Binghe would carry him to the hot springs while he was sleeping and clean him up, but right now, Luo Binghe could at most only hug his leg, unable to even budge him. He was squatting anxiously to the side, looking as if he wanted to cry. Shen Qingkai comforted him and said, "Forget it, it's fine. I'll do it myself." The deepest part of the natural hot spring that Luo Binghe dug out in the underground palace could reach up to and past Shen Qingkai's chest. If he threw Luo Binghe in, he would be instantly and completely submerged. Shen Qingkai could only carry him carefully to sit on a boulder nearby and had to keep an eye on him to make sure he was sitting stably and wouldn't slip off. He'd just planned to quickly clean himself up when he suddenly saw Luo Binghe trying his hardest to reach his hand out to the blue stone near him, attempting to help him grab a honey locust box but not being able to reach it no matter what. This appearance reminded him of the Luo Binghe that had Xiāng dug a hole in the valley, carrying a patched cloth bag when he went up Qingqiang mountain to ask them to take him in as a disciple. Shen Qingkai stared at him for a while and couldn't help but pull him down, drag him into an embrace, and start to rub his head. Under his havoc-creating hands, Luo Binghe choked slightly on a few mouthfuls of water. Originally, his skin was already a bit red from the surrounding steam, but with this motion that shook him, he putang and directly rolled into a ball. Although Shen Qingkai was being sweetly cooperative and let him press down on him while lying down, Luo Binghe's white little face turned dark instantly. This kind of body was useless no matter how many thousands of times you pressed someone down. You wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Seeing Luo Bingbun's face turn from red to white, and then turn dark, Shen Qingkai held back his laughter so hard that he thought he was going to suffer internal injuries. This is the retribution for impetuously messing around with your Shizun last night, isn't it? Luo Binghe was broken-hearted as he said, "If it wasn't for Shizun seducing me first." After hearing these words, Shen Qingkai's face blushed and he was secretly ashamed. He fought back his blushing and suddenly let go. Luo Binghe was caught off guard and slid into the water, making a line of bubbles gudong floated to the surface. Going by what Shen Qingkai wished for, the first hideout he thought of was Qingqiang Mountain. But Luo Binghe wasn't willing to go back even if he was beaten to death. Thinking about it, it made sense. He was in a vulnerable state and if he went back, others would come to know. And among those others, Lu Qingge would definitely be one of them. So Shen Qingkai compromised and took him to the human world. To hide in plain sight, they chose to go to a flourishing town. While waiting for Luo Binghe's body to recover, he was to stay here and rest for the meanwhile. Shen Qingkai was so bored that he was itching to do something and easily found a position at the largest academy in the town. Naturally, Luo Binghe was not happy with this. First, he didn't like that Shen Qingkai was accepting other disciples. Were there not enough disciples at Qingjing Peak? And he wanted to accept more. Secondly, he disliked it even more when he was treated like Shen Qingkai's son. Especially when they went to bed at night, he had to let him kiss and hug him, yet wasn't able to do anything and had to listen to Shen Qingkai jokingly call him good boy and baby, making him hate his current form more. He felt resentful and impatient that he wasn't seeing improvement. Today, when Shen Qingkai returned from the academy, he saw that Luo Binghe had moved a bench to sit coldly in front of the door, waiting for him. If he was in his adult form, he would have made others shrink back and tremble. But right now with his size, others couldn't help but reach their hands out towards his face and squeeze it. No matter how many thousands of miles he tried to keep others away, the incessantly chirping little sparrows that surrounded him wouldn't stop. They were piled up next to his bench, one after another, and Shen Qingkai was egged on to join. These were all children of nearby families. From the first day when Shen Qingkai and Luo Binghe moved in, they all fell for the male protagonist's charm and clung to him desperately, refusing to be shooed away. Fortunately, they were all afraid of Shen Qingkai, since children were normally afraid of teachers and would flee in panic when they saw him return. Shen Qingkai elegantly reached out his hands, claws, preparing to squeeze Luo Binghe's cheeks, as he did daily. Just then, several voices chimed, "Mr. Shen!" rang out from behind him. A couple of slender figures, wearing silver and gold, walked into the yard. Shen Qingkai turned around and saw that it was a couple of energetic wives from the town. He nodded his head to greet them. The head of the group took 2 steps forward, grabbed his arm and dragged him towards the outside, saying, "Mr. Shen, I've been looking for you for so long. Let's go, come with me, the girls have been waiting for so long that they're getting anxious." Luo Binghe yelled, "Go where? What girls?" Shen Qingkai was also confused. Madame A was surprised at Luo Binghe's expression and shook her head as she said, "Ayo, how can such a small person have such a scary voice? Why is the young master angry? Mr. Shen, is he sulking?" Madame B came over immediately. "Come, young master. Older sister will give you some candy to eat. Don't get in your father's way." Luo Binghe ignored them and with a cold expression, said, "She. Did you plan to do something today?" Shen Qingkai replied, "This mast. I don't remember." Madame A rebuked, "Mr. Shen, you're asking me even though you already know? Do I have to spell it out for you? Oh, well. There's a niece in my family who is a respectable, dignified girl. Seeing how you two seem to be a good match, we set up a banquet in the restaurant in the west so you can meet her. And a daughter from my family. My younger cousin. There's also my younger cousin." Turned out, word spreads quickly in bustling places. Shen Qingkai hadn't been here for long before the residents spread the news, a new gentleman had arrived. He was not only knowledgeable and talented but also well-mannered and gentle. His looks were even more gentle and elegant, very refreshing. Of course, these were all empty platitudes. The most important point was that he was definitely rich, super rich. He bought a stylish residence right off the bat. How could he do that if he wasn't rich? He also brought his 4 to 5-year-old son, a fair cutie who was already so handsome at such a young age and would definitely be talented and have an impressive appearance in the future. Heavens! Any family who had a daughter of marriageable age, or just gave birth to a daughter that was not yet betrothed, were trying to grab him first and arrange things later. They wouldn't be missing out on anything if they grabbed the older one or the younger one. Luo Binghe's face turned green and he said angrily, "He doesn't need a blind date. I'm not dead yet." Madame C swayed her hips and walked up to him. "Young Master Shen, would you not be happy if your father remarried? Is it bad to get a gentle and pretty new mother to take care of you?" Madame B agreed as she said, "That's right. Mr. Shen, you can't spoil him like this. I heard that you take him to the academy with you and he even sits on your lap. I'm not trying to nag, but this sort of upbringing won't produce a good man. My son." Seeing how Luo Binghe was about to wave his hand and blow up the whole yard, Shen Qingkai quickly hugged him and backed up hurriedly. "I appreciate the madam's well wishes. I don't plan to, remarry. There is no one else in the house and I still have to take care of my child, so I cannot accept your invitation." Madame A, with a big red peony in her hair next to her face, righteously said, "Mr. Shen, what are you talking about? It's time for you, as an adult man, to get married. How can your large residence exist without a hostess? It's unheard of for a person with such a graceful demeanor as yourself to raise a child on your own. Not only is it uncomfortable for you, it looks strange from the outside and sounds bad when others talk about it." She waved her fan and said, in a tone that no one was able to argue with, "Then it's settled. Mr. Shen, come with us now, and the young master can stay at home. Someone will stay with him." Luo Binghe sneered. "Let's see who's going to leave." His evil cold energy didn't last long. For the safety of this town and the 3 madams that enthusiastically tried to set him up on blind dates, Shen Qingkai whisked out a few spells that made them faint. Afterwards they fled, abandoning the residence that he'd just bought for not even a month. Naturally, he could only escape back to Qingqiang Mountain. At the bottom of the steps to the mountain, Shen Qingkai held Luo Binghe's hand as they walked up. The elder brother who'd been sweeping the stairs for over 10 years was as diligent as he was on the first day. Shen Qingqiu ascended the stairs and met his eyes, giving a slight smile. He was about to greet him when the elder brother looked at him, then looked at Luo Binghe who was holding his hand. His face twitched. Suddenly, he threw the broomstick down and ran up the mountain stairs as if his ass was on fire. He jumped hundreds of steps in one leap, leaving Shen Qingqiu shocked but somehow proud. As expected of Qingqiang Mountain, where even a stair sweeper hid his real talents. There were many stairs and before they'd even gotten halfway, Luo Binghe started to yawn. He didn't have enough stamina presently, so he inevitably became fatigued. Shen Qingqiu picked him up and said, "Sleep." A disciple's thoughts were impossible to grasp. Sometimes Luo Binghe would enthusiastically let him hug him and other times, he would struggle with his face red and demanded to walk on his own. Right now, he was probably very tired, since he fell asleep right after closing his eyes, nestled in Shen Qingqiu's arms. After they walked up the stairs and stepped into the square, Shen Qingqiu felt as if the stairs on them were not quite right and heard pieces of conversation. The stair sweeper's stare was specifically strange. He walked up to Qingjing Peak and reached the entrance of the bamboo house as disciples rushed over excitedly. As soon as Ming Fan saw Luo Binghe in Shen Qingqiu's arms, he retreated a couple of steps, as if the sky had thundered, while others scrambled to the front. Ning Yingying pushed away the people in her way and stared at the sleeping Luo Binghe in Shen Qingqiu's arms, saying, "Looks like Luo. So much like Luo. Day. If he didn't look like Luo Binghe, then who?" Ning Yingying grabbed Shen Qingqiu's sleeves excitedly and eagerly asked, "Shizun, does he have a name? Have you given him a name yet?" Shen Qingqiu, ... Ning Yingying said, "If he doesn't have a name, can I give him one?" "What the hell?" Luo Binghe moved around in his arms and muttered, "Noisy." Shen Qingqiu's folding fan was halfway in the air, he held it threateningly for a little before pulling it back rather forcefully and making a shushing gesture. Unexpectedly, the entrance of the bamboo house collapsed all of a sudden, startling Luo Binghe into opening his eyes and waking up. Lu Qingge strode over. Shen Qingqiu stared at the sneaky Ming Fan with daggers in his eyes and suddenly tried to hide Luo Binghe behind him. He faked a smile and said, "Lu Shidi, I trust you've been well since the last time we saw each other." Lu Qingge said sharply, "Hiding." Shen Qingqiu said, "Hiding what? I'm not hiding anything." Luo Binghe put a hand on Shen Qingqiu's chest and said, "I don't need to hide. I'm not afraid of him." Lu Qingge walked in and looked down to stare at Luo Binghe's dark little face which was full of provocation. After a long while, as if he was denying something very hard, he stammered and said to Shen Qingqiu, "Why you, when did you and Luo Binghe, with him? With him? With him? Do what with him?" Lu Qingge seemed to find it hard to speak, and Ming Fan wailed in his place, "Give birth to such a large son." Lu Juju. Airplane shooting towards the sky didn't write a novel for JJWXC. Shen Qingqiu very rudely shooed Lu Juju off of Qingjing Peak, and thunderously roared, "How can a man give birth?" Ning Yingying, who understood everything now, was greatly disappointed after finding out that the boy whom Shen Qingqiu carried back wasn't their son. She felt like her enthusiasm and the 50 names she thought of were such a waste. She pouted as she said, "If it wasn't for the stair sweeper older brother spreading nonsense everywhere, people wouldn't have taken it seriously. Who knew that Luo would also have a day where he'd run wild too? Stair sweeper, you're very good. You're very fast and have a wonderful and strange thoughts." Shen Qingqiu would remembered it from now on. Ming Fan was embarrassed and said, "This disciple thought that if it was with a demon, it wouldn't be impossible for a man to give birth." The people behind him nodded furiously. Shen Qingqiu felt like he was at his breaking point and tried to reason, even if a man could give birth, it's impossible for a child to grow this big in just a few months. Ming Fan replied again, "Who knows? This disciple thought that it wouldn't be impossible if that demon Luo Binghe's son was this large right as soon as he was born. Qing Jing Peak's long-lost punishment of copying scriptures will return to the human world tonight. With great difficulty, Shen Qingkai found the opportunity to return to Qingqiang Mountain, and it was a rare moment for all the 12 peak lords to be all present, so they naturally had to gather for a dinner or something. Shen Qingkai hadn't been able to act like a pretentious prick while seated on the second seat at Qiangding Peak Hall for a long time, and he missed it a lot. He greeted each of the peak lords with, "Long time no see, long time no see, I trust you've been well since the last time we saw each other," or, "You're being polite, you're being polite." His fan unfolded, and he was beaming with happiness. When Yu Qingyuan saw Shen Qingkai, his expression was a little strange, but he didn't say much and sat in the first seat, smiling at him. He put the stack of files in his hand on the eucalyptus table, and Shang Qinghua hurriedly took them to pass them down the table. Shen Qingkai took the file that Shang Qinghua gave him and glanced over it casually. Shang Qinghua probably did something again to annoy Mo Beijun, because the corners of his mouth were swollen, and he gave him a pitiful smile. Shen Qingkai couldn't bear to look at him anymore, so he turned his gaze to the file, where the focus of the discussion was outlined in cinnabar. He took one glance, and with a puh, he spewed out the sip of tea he'd just drunk. First, strongly crack down on regret of Chunshan and Song of BingQiu manuscripts, and prohibit any copy to circulate anywhere, in public or in private. Within 1 month, personal copies should be turned in, and if someone is found secretly hiding or circulating any copies, they will be severely punished. Turning in the illustration as well as a plus. Second, due to several complaints, relevant people in charge at Baijian Peak are to strengthen their management. Their disciples were forbidden to pick a fight with other peak disciples. Third, due to a small number of complaints, Qingjing Peak members should keep in mind what time it is, and avoid practicing during lunch and at night. Fourth, Xianchu Peak requested the fence to be raised higher and applied for lightning running through the fence. Fifth, Kuxing Peak has had fewer and fewer disciples over the years, and requested for expansion of enrollment, as well as to be given priority to pick new disciples when the mountain gates were opened next time. Sixth, Peak lords are to pay attention to their disciples' education. Disciples are not to fight with Huanhua Palace disciples using their Qingqiang Mountain disciple status. Seventh, when carrying out tasks, if demons are encountered, do not rush to attack. First, find out their purpose and which faction they belong to before determining whether or not they are an enemy. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Spraying tea in public was a very inappropriate action, but he didn't need to worry about his reputation because 8 or 9 of the 12 peak lords also sprayed their tea out at the same time after reading the first line. In such an environment, his action didn't seem so rude anymore. A blanket of awkwardness set into the chamber, and even though Shen Qingkai waved his fan so hard that it would have created waves in water, he was unable to dissipate the feeling. Regret of Chunshan, with no virtue or skill, was somehow first in importance. And there was even an extra thing: what the hell was Song of BingQiu? When the meeting ended, Shen Qingkai felt vexed as he walked towards Qingjing Peak. He hadn't gotten far when he found a good amount of peak lords had also come along with him. Shen Qingkai kindly said, "Fellow Zhidi and Shimei, this doesn't seem to be the direction to return to your peaks." Qi Qingqi replied, "That's because we weren't going to return to our peaks in the first place." Shen Qingkai already knew that this was the case and tried to struggle. "Why do you suddenly want to come to Qingjing Peak to visit? The bamboo house is simple and crude, improper for receiving guests. Don't pretend to be stupid. We know your bamboo house is simple and crude. Who's going to see you? Of course, we're going to see the treasured disciple that you hid." These people were enthusiastically treating Luo Binghe as a strange thing to be put on display. Shen Qingkai helplessly said, "He's going to be upset. I don't mean to scold you, Shen Shixing, but how can he, a disciple, be angry at you, his Shizun? Did you not discipline or educate him well enough? Things shouldn't be like this. No matter what relationship you two have right now, he should be disciplined as usual. If he's angry, then so be it. I'm not afraid. Anyways, the amount of core strength Luo Binghe has right now isn't even 1/10 of what he had before, so it's more appropriate for him to not be angry. Because the Peak Lord of Kuxing Peak normally practices asceticism every day, he was quite angry right now because his request to be given priority when picking disciple was denied. He became more impatient as he said, "So much nonsense being said. Are you afraid we'll eat up the little bit of tea leaves you have left? Let's go, let's go." Shen Qingkai knew that he wouldn't be able to escape this obstacle and was dragged towards Qingjing Peak with his face full of black lines. How come they knew everything so clearly, even clearer than I do? He could stop one or two of them, but a swarm of Peak Lords surged into the bamboo house and he wasn't able to slow them down. His efforts were rendered useless as soon as Qi Qingqi entered the house. Luo Binghe was fast asleep on the bed, tucked in snugly, and was exactly how Shen Qingkai left him. Shen Qingkai gestured, "He's asleep, don't bother him." Lu Qingge glanced inside and couldn't help but say, "How come he looks different than he did yesterday?" Different? Shen Qingkai turned his head and did feel as if he was a little different. Luo Binghe seemed to have grown up by a couple of years and he looked to be about 7 or 8 years old now. Wei Qingwei softly said, "He's growing well, he's growing well." Qi Qingqi carefully examined him for a while and said, "At the rate he's growing at, he probably can't wear these clothes anymore, right?" Shen Qingkai hadn't thought of this problem before. He carefully gave it some thought and remembered that this morning, Luo Binghe's clothes actually didn't fit well. The sleeves seemed to be short and he hurriedly replied, "It's true, I wasn't careful enough. Tomorrow I'll take him down the mountain and buy a couple of outfits." Qi Qingqi replied, "Buy them? Don't you know you can use ready-made ones? Just go to Xianchu Peak and ask a couple of older sisters and younger sisters to make him some new clothes." Several Peak Lords laughed unkindly after she said this. Just the thought of fragrant fairies surrounding a resentful, short-sleeved demon, tittering and giggling, was enough to entertain and delight the idle Peak Lords who have nothing better to do all day long. Seeing them throw stones at someone who'd already fallen down a well and taking joy in someone else's misfortune, Shen Qingkai couldn't bear it in his heart for Luo Binghe whose dignity had fallen to the floor. He hurriedly said, "That's enough. Come, let's take a seat in the living room and not surround him. Stop laughing, be careful to not wake him up. You didn't let us see him before, and you won't let us even now? Shen Shixing is so boring." Shen Qingkai replied, "Give me some face." With great difficulty, he managed to rapidly disperse his comrades. When he returned to the bamboo house, his head was spinning. Luo Binghe had already woken up and was sitting at his original eucalyptus study table. His legs couldn't reach the ground, so they were suspended in midair, and to the side sat a pile of files that was taller than he was. He held a red-inked writing brush in his hand, concentrated while he made notes on the files. Shen Qingkai looked at him for a while when he reached the door and asked, "What are you doing?" Luo Binghe raised his head and replied, "Shizun hasn't returned for a long time, and nobody took care of the records, so this disciple wanted to revise the catalogue and put it in storage." Shen Qingkai replied, "You should concentrate on your cultivation right now, there's no need for you to take care of these matters." Luo Binghe responded, "But when Shizun isn't here, I have nothing else to do, so I might as well do this." Shen Qingkai sat down beside him, thought for a while and asked, "Are you unhappy that we returned to Qingjing Peak?" Luo Binghe smiled and replied, "What are you talking about, Shizun? How could this disciple be unhappy?" Shen Qingkai got up slowly and walked towards the exit. Suddenly, he couldn't take another step anymore. Luo Binghe had jumped down from the table, hugged his leg and gritted his teeth as he said, "Yes, this disciple is not happy." Shen Qingkai said, "That's right, you should say it when you're unhappy." From now on, if there's anything you want to say, don't keep it bottled up. If you really don't like Qingjing Peak, then when you've recovered your original body, we can just leave. Your current situation is too inconvenient for moving about. If your body suddenly changes, Qingjing Mountain can at least protect you. Luo Binghe responded, I do like it. But I like Qingjing Peak, only Qingjing Peak, not Qingjing Mountain. Apart from you and me, nobody else. No, Shen Qingjing thought, the Qingjing Peak you like didn't exist in reality at all, did it? Depressed, Luo Binghe said, Shizun, when you're with me, do you lose a lot of opportunities to do your own things? Shen Qingjing smiled in spite of himself. Just now, you were pretty good at pretending to be asleep. Your ears are sharp, too. How much of your core strength have you recovered? Luo Binghe replied, Shizun. I didn't want to come back not because I don't like it here but because it's too easy for you to be taken away here. He said, faintly, if it was the me from before, I would still be confident that I can snatch you back no matter what. But the me right now. I really think I won't be able to compete with others. Shen Qingjing knocked the top of his head a couple of times and said, what are you competing for? You don't need to snatch me, Shizun will follow you naturally. Communicating with your partner was really vital. Shen Qingjing wouldn't have said something so corny to the adult Luo Binghe even if you put a knife to his throat, but since it's the mini version that he can carry in his arms and act cute while he was begging for comfort, he didn't feel any sort of pressure in his heart. Luo Binghe raised his face towards him and stared at him affectionately. The flowers were lovely, the moon was round, there was beautiful scenery all around, a heady scent permeated the air and the atmosphere was very good. One couldn't help but feel enchanted by it. Luo Binghe's watery eyes burned more and more, until he couldn't bear it anymore and pushed Shen Qingjing onto the bamboo couch, throwing himself over him as well. He was lying on Shen Qingjing's chest, and the pair of large eyes stared at the pair of small eyes. Shen Qingjing, you can continue. Even if he were to continue, they couldn't do what Luo Binghe wanted to do. Shen Qingjing couldn't hide the sympathy in his expression. For a while, Luo Binghe roared with his baby voice, fed up and cursing the world. End chapter. The Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Extra chapter. The Regret of Chunshan, Song of BingQiu. Wait a moment, you calm down a bit first. The body of Luo Binghe that was lodged between Shen Qingjing's legs shifted forward a bit, but today, I saw some hopefully very interesting things. I'm afraid I won't be able to calm down for several days. What should be done, Shizun? After more than a month of cultivation in Qingjing Mountain, Luo Binghe finally slowly recovered his original body. Shen Qingjing knew that today would not end well for him, but he still remained calm and said, isn't it simple? What is it? Give it to me and I'll take a look so we can go over it together. But first, sit up properly so that we can talk comfortably. Luo Binghe nodded, ignoring the last sentence and said, okay, then I'll let Shizun take a look. He unhurriedly took out a thin booklet he was holding. That booklet was colorful, very gaudy, and oddly familiar at first glance. Shen Qingjing became suspicious as Luo Binghe turned it open, straightened his back and read it out loud in a clear voice. After nightfall, Luo Binghe climbed onto the bed, tossing and turning. He was used to sleeping in the firewood storage, and suddenly laying on a bed made it difficult to sleep, especially alongside the fact that the Shizun whom he thought about day and night was laying not too far away, only separated by a dividing screen and a bed curtain. The diligent concern he felt during the daytime seemed to be amplified and changing since the subject of his concern was right in front of him. It was as if there was a wicked fire suppressed within his abdomen, the more it burned, the more it grew, and the higher it went. Shen Qingjing, ... Luo Binghe didn't change his expression and continued to read. Luo Binghe snuck onto the bed, untied the belt of Shen Qingjing's clothes and reached into the fabric, feeling the smooth and delicate surface and the soft flexibility of his body. In a state of confusion, he unconsciously tore the belt into two. Shen Qingqiu glanced towards the ground where the belt that was just torn off by Luo Binghe laid. Goosebumps raised all over his body, and he couldn't utter a word. Luo Binghe closed the booklet, lifted his eyes and said in a serious tone of voice, "In here, it said this was the night when I moved out of the firewood storage. Love was soaring, lust rising, and I entered the bamboo house late at night under the cover of darkness to do this and that to the Shizun who was being suppressed by the dream demon. The Shizun who couldn't move, was loved and ravished till dawn. WTH. If I remember correctly, at that time Luo Binghe was only 15 years old. They have no conscience. Absolutely preposterous." Luo Binghe turned the pages as he said, "The Luo Binghe in the book is more courageous than this disciple. Aside from his daring actions, his thoughts towards Shizun are also on another level." Shen Qingqiu said, "If you really did dare to act like this, I will not guarantee that I won't end your life on the spot." Luo Binghe leaned down and kissed his earlobe, the heat lingering on the earlobe as he said coquettishly, "Shizun, didn't you say that you wanted to take a look together? At least look a bit more." "I don't dare to look, I'm afraid I'll blind the titanium gold dog's eyes and have no way to replace them." Luo Binghe smiled and said, "Don't want to look at it? Then I'll read it to you." He hummed and said, ever since that night Shizun lost his virginity to Luo Binghe, he wanted to severely punish this disobedient disciple and deliberately drove him off the Qingqiang mountain, but in the end, he couldn't bear to do so. He just treated him coldly, up until the Immortal Alliance conference. With their master-disciple relationship turning awkward, this master and disciple ended up parting ways, only to reunite several years later after many twists and turns. When Shen Qingqiu was finally caught by Luo Binghe. "Come on Shizun, look, the part about Huanhua Palace's water prison is wonderfully well written." Shen Qingqiu couldn't help it, he was really curious. He only managed to resist for a moment before he snuck a peek from the corner of his eye. With just this peek, it felt as if fire stunned him to an outer crisp with a tender inside. The regret of Chunshan, the 37th calamity of the water prison love challenge. Shen Qingqiu shook his head, his words slurring, "Luo Binghe, let me go." Luo Binghe held those cheeks, kneaded them a few times and pulled them apart, forcing the spot on his backside that had been ravaged countless times to be exposed. He grinned and said, "Shizun, you are crying now and begging me to let you go. Did you ever think that such a day would come?" Shen Qingqiu couldn't stop sobbing, "It's already swollen. It can't go in." Sure enough, it was so swollen you could hardly bear to look at it. The circle of bulging red flesh was swollen to the point of glowing, shut tightly, looking extremely difficult to break through. Luo Binghe felt a little pity in his heart, but he quickly remembered how Shen Qingqiu abandoned him back then, stirring his hatred and made him move forward ruthlessly. After only inserting a little bit of it, he found it extremely difficult to continue. Because of the redness and swelling, it was hotter and more slippery than usual, but it was also tighter. Shen Qingqiu cried like it rained with pear blossoms, gasping for breath as he was stabbed with pain by the member that was being forced inside him. However, since his hands were tied, his struggles were all in vain. Shen Qingqiu, ... What the freak is this freaking stuff? Who the hell is this person with a lovely tear-stained face? Who is this devilish seducer? It's obviously Luo Binghe who cries the hardest every time we go to bed. Look at the author's name, Lu Su Mian Hua. One could tell with a glance that the author was up to no good, definitely the same kind as airplane shooting towards the sky. Luo Binghe finished reading and commented, "If it were me, I definitely wouldn't do such coercive things. Shizun only needs to furrow your brows and I wouldn't dare to do anything. How could it get to this painful point and I would still be unwilling to stop? This storyline is a bit distorted. More than distortion, this is OOC. Thoroughly OOC. OOC is endless. What the hell is the regret of Chunshan? It's literally an OOC RP's pornographic fanfiction. And this was actually very popular. No wonder I always heard little sisters talking about how the more outrageous a story was, the more likely it would become a popular novel in the circle. No, this was not the main point. Shen Qingqiu cursed the person who wrote this pornography book and composed this pornographic work. Single dog. You deserve to be scolded for a lifetime, and never find a wife until you die. Luo Binghe said. Why did Shizun's face turn pale then red? The later plot has even more ups and downs, and is amazing. Although in those 5 years, I respected Shizun's body and never dared to commit even the slightest profanity, but these booklets are being circulated in the market, there's no harm in scheming them to get a good laugh from these curious storylines. Shen Qingqiu glanced at the title, The Regret of Chunshan, the 5 years of the 49th calamity. The egg broke all over the floor. No. It can't be. This title. They wouldn't even spare the gate to the new world, they shouldn't have this heavy of a taste, right? But the facts proved that Shen Qingqiu indeed had underestimated the limits of the author of Regret of Chunshan. The candle light trembled. Although Shen Qingqiu was unconscious, his eyes and lips were red, and his whole body was dyed with a layer of lust. Luo Binghe put Shen Qingqiu's soft hands on the back of Luo Binghe's neck and kissed him. It looked as if Shen Qingqiu was awake and took the initiative to hook Luo Binghe's neck and kiss back. The curtain laid on the ground, moving without wind, and lingering like the dead, the messy clothes strewn on the ground. Luo Binghe's deep breaths came from the swaying gauze. Shen Qingqiu laid on Luo Binghe lifelessly, wrapped by his firm arms. Both nipples were sucked and swollen, like 2 small fruits. There were bruised handprints on the buttocks. The lower body was fucked bright red and the soft butthole still swallowed the semi-hard penis that was dripping wet. Shen Qingqiu burst into tears. They were even okay with this cruelty. This was challenging a person's views on the world, values, and life. Challenging the limit of morality. It was said that green ding-ding childbirth novels were very popular. Praying and begging Regret of Chunshan, please don't have a childbirth plot, thank you. As a few pages were hurriedly turned over, they were immediately followed by another astonishing chapter. The Regret of Chunshan, the 55th calamity of parasite blood of the heavenly demon. Their chests were stuck close to each other and Luo Binghe felt that the skin of the person in his arms was delicate and tender, being soaked in the mountain spring, it became even smoother and silkier. He hugged Shen Qingqiu silently, bowed his head and gave him a deep kiss, sometimes biting his lips and tearing it lightly, sometimes sticking his tongue in, and entangled in his mouth violently. Although Shen Qingqiu was reluctant, the blood of the heavenly demon was acting strangely in his abdomen, his body felt weak and he was breathless from being kissed, his chest was irregularly undulating and his nipples were rubbing against Luo Binghe's muscles, gradually standing upright. Unknowingly, his legs were pushed apart and Luo Binghe rushed in. Since the two of them had been involved for so long already, Shen Qingqiu was already accustomed to Luo Binghe's giant cock, but it was still extremely uncomfortable for it to enter so suddenly, especially since the moment the meat pillar smashed the internal wall, warm spring water also took the opportunity to pour in, and the mouth below drank a lot of liquid. The legs hanging on both sides of Luo Binghe's waist suddenly clamped, and the internal wall trembled. Luo Binghe only felt that the small hole was sucking him hard, egging him on as he vigorously kneaded Shen Qingqiu's buttocks, relaxing him while adjusting his posture. After fucking for so many days, he was already fucked dry. Shen Qingqiu eased his breath and scolded with tears, "Get lost." Luo Binghe smiled and said, "Shizun is scolding me like this, but your body isn't listening." Shen Qingqiu gritted his teeth and said unwillingly, "If you hadn't fed me that poisonous blood, how could I be so humiliated by you, you white-eyed wolf?" Under the control of the heavenly blood, he could only obediently spread his legs apart and relax his backside to facilitate Luo Binghe's thrusts. The meat hole lovingly held onto Luo Binghe, and sucked him in carefully. Shen Qingqiu panted more and more chaotically, crying without tears, and was stabbed so hardly, he tightened his lips and moaned helplessly. Luo Binghe dragged his hips with one hand, keeping the hips of the two close together, and slapped Shen Qingqiu's round and white buttocks with the other hand. Inserting while slapping, this made Shen Qingqiu very embarrassed and angry. After one round, with less than a moment of rest, Luo Binghe carried him out of the water. It was cold outside of the water, Shen Qingqiu's hands and feet even shrank back. Luo Binghe laid him flat on a large blue stone next to the hot spring. Under the sky, the two entangled together into one. The blue stone was ice cold, and Shen Qingqiu twisted his body as soon as he laid on it. He had a fair complexion and had just experienced a violent taking. The steamed by the hot spring heated his whole body was into gorgeous pink. The water was rippling in his glimmering yet dark-colored eyes, and he was tired and sleepy. He was discouraged and turned his head, refusing to look directly at Luo Binghe, this insurgent. Luo Binghe stuck himself between his legs, placed his pale white calves on his shoulders, and pushed himself in with a chuckle, not too quickly and not too slowly. Every inch of the inner wall was pushed to the limit and was rubbed by the pillar. The wrinkles of the meat hole were also smoothed out. Shen Qingqiu. Non-consent and the use of force, there were so many tricks, the author must have had a great time. Luo Binghe said, actually, I never thought that the heavenly demon blood could be used for this purpose. Shen Qingqiu was silent. Having seen the low limits of the original proud immortal demon way, he hadn't thought about it. It was just that he didn't expect to see this purpose would be used on him one day. Shen Qingqiu said, I have learned a lot. Luo Binghe nodded and said, I have learned a lot. Then he spoke again. In this case, I can't call this knowledge useless, right? Shen Qingqiu warned, Luo Binghe, although I gave you permission, but it doesn't mean that I allow you to play these kind of tricks. Luo Binghe was startled and said, oh, this disciple understood. He looked a little depressed but he didn't force it, which made Shen Qingqiu felt awkward. Luo Binghe never made any demands from him in this regard because he was obedient. He was always cautious and observant, even watching how the color of his face change. After finally reading the booklet to find some confidence, he wanted to try it with him, but instead he got splashed with cold water. Shen Qingqiu became restless and after a long while, he finally picked up the folding fan, covered his face and hesitantly said, how do you want to do it? Luo Binghe immediately full of vitality like spring flowers began to bloom. Seeing this, Shen Qingqiu was also secretly happy, thinking that it wasn't a big deal, this old face would go along with him, plus, they already did it before anyway. He picked up regret of Chunshan and hurriedly flipped through it and did not see any unscientific postures or weird play methods, and felt slightly relieved. Unexpectedly, when he turned around, he saw Luo Binghe seriously holding a thicker booklet, and greeted him with a smile on his face as he said, Shizun, what are you doing with that book? Shen Qingqiu was speechless. He looked at the cover of the booklet in Luo Binghe's hands. It was the rising star song of BingQiu that was said to have joined the honorable regret of Chunshan in becoming the twin stars of the fandom. Author, the Three Madonnas. Luo Binghe said, this book teaches more things and also goes into more detail. When one gets started, it is very easy and quick to pick up the techniques. This pot of flower wine was made in accordance to the method specified. Today, let's see if it is as effective as described in the book that have a miraculous effect. I think it's more like its limits are even lower. In any case, Shen Qingqiu came to know that this pot of wine was definitely not for drinking. Wait, the props were already prepared? So, the pitiful look just now was just an act to fool him again. Luo Binghe lifted Shen Qingqiu up onto his knees to form a posture with arms raised high, his waist collapsed and bent into a soft curve, with his back facing him. This was the condition Shen Qingqiu demanded in order for him to proceed. If they were to imitate what's on the book, it had to be a posture from behind. Otherwise, Shen Qingqiu really had no place to hide his thin-skinned old face. Although Luo Binghe had always been obsessed with doing it face-to-face with Shizun, on one hand, he was eager to put his learnings into practice, and on the other hand, it was emphasized in the booklet that the bottom was more likely to feel pleasure from the position if entered from the back, so he happily agreed. He lifted the rare pot of flower wine, pointed the slender spout at the confined pink spot behind Shen Qiu, and slowly pushed it in. The spout was thin at the front and thick at the back, making penetration easy. The more it entered inside, the tighter the back point became. The cold wine was poured into the passage, the inner walls were stimulated and contracted violently. Shen Qiu grasped the bedding under his body tightly, furrowing his eyebrows. He could hear the sound of wine being poured into his abdomen. The feeling of fullness in the lower abdomen and the increased sensitivity in the back became more and more obvious. Shen Qiu couldn't help saying, "Enough." Luo Binghe remained obediently still, but the long mouth of the wine jar stayed stuck in his backside. The wine's initial taste was light, but the after effect was strong. In a short while, Shen Qiu's inner wall was burning fiercely with pain. He couldn't relieve the painful and itchy feeling no matter what, and he moved his arms to crawl forward just a bit. Luo Binghe didn't stop him this time. The spout broke away from the spot on his backside with a popping sound. He immediately squeezed the hole tightly before the wine came out, but then he didn't know what to do. It would be too shameful to allow the wine to trickle out from behind in front of Luo Binghe. But he was only able to crawl forward a bit before he couldn't stand it anymore. Even slight movements made him afraid that he would not be able to hold his backside tight. Luo Binghe covered his body, played with his pointed red nipples with one hand and bit into his smooth shoulder. The other hand lifted his weak arms, then held his member, the hard tip pressed threateningly behind him, aimed at the small hole and rubbed it twice. Seeing how he really learned a lot from that hellish booklet, Shen Qiu was depressed that he was played by him as he wrinkled the sheets under his body with his sweaty hands. With just a single moment of carelessness, his guard was let down, the confined point was breached and driven straight into. In an instant, Shen Qiu went completely soft from his waist down to his leg. The arms that barely supported his upper body couldn't support it anymore and he laid down. The only fortunate thing was that Luo Binghe was huge enough to fill him to the brink, firmly blocking the wine within Shen Qiu's so that it would not leak out. It still hurt to be penetrated by this kind of thing. But within this pain, there seemed to be something different. After his entire internal walls was rubbed thoroughly with wine, it felt hot, swollen, warm, and wet. When Luo Binghe began to thrust, the opening became uncontrollable and the wine poured out as if honey was flowing horizontally. The sound of liquid continued to gurgle during his movements, making his face flushed with shame. Deep in the lower abdomen was a sore numbness, and he felt an itchy yearning to be thrusted into roughly. However, the tip of the head kept hitting that small patch of muscle inside neither too strongly nor too lightly, so the anxious Shen Qiu twisted his waist and couldn't help but push himself back. Luo Binghe caught onto this small movement immediately. He paused, took a breath and said with joy, "Shizun? Is it good? Did I do well?" The thrusts were fast and the reddish transparent wine leaked more and more from where they were joined. Shen Qiu's fair pair of thighs was splashed irritatingly. Fine wine and his disciple's member were tumbling within his belly, stirring endlessly. Shen Qiu's knuckles turned white when he was forced to grasp the bedding tightly as his eyes closed in embarrassment. Luo Binghe persistently asked, "Good? Is it good?" He couldn't clearly hear what Shen Qiu replied in a low voice, so he leaned down and listened carefully, conveniently sending the object underneath him deeper at the same time. Shen Qiu's backside felt a moment of pain, and he sighed, face. Shen Qiu's body was red from the effects of the wine, and at the same time, it was as if he was being steamed by the wine that even his breath gave off a sweet smell. Luo Binghe couldn't help but kiss him with his head sideways, searching for his mouth with the tip of his tongue, only to feel that his body fluids all emanated the smell of mellow wine. "Shizun," he said, "do you want to look at my face?" Shen Qiu gave a slight nod. Luo Binghe said, "Are you sure?" Doing it from the back, this was originally requested by Shizun. If you want to change it to the front, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to turn back again. His rustling baritone voice lingered in Shen Qingqiu's ears. Shen Qingqiu felt dizzy and twisted his back. Luo Binghe pulled out and roughly turned him to lay on his back, a position where he could easily be butchered. Shen Qingqiu's pale cheeks were pink, his eyes and nose were especially red, and there were a few teardrops on his eyelashes. Luo Binghe kissed him one place at a time, and gently rubbed the outer edge of the tender meat at the mouth of his hole with the fingers of one hand. He said gently, "Shizun. Look." Shen Qingqiu's chin was guided by him. As soon as he lowered his head, he saw the base of his white thighs, messy with wine and semen. A flower seemed to be opened in the middle of the two plump meat mounds, swollen into a circle, the inner wall turned inside out, and it was convulsing poorly, spitting out some cloudy white liquid. ... Shen Qingqiu was speechless, subconsciously raising his hand to cover his eyes. Luo Binghe comforted him and placed several kisses on his cheek, then thrust it in again. Shen Qingqiu felt another instance of burning pain. Luo Binghe no longer supported his backside. He fell down, his black hair spread out on the pillow mat, his fingers weakly plunged into the tight muscles of Luo Binghe's back, and he lifted his neck. After going in and out vigorously, a good amount of the alcohol in Shen Qingqiu's stomach flowed out. The inner wall, which was washed in and out of spirits, was in perfect condition at this time, warm and flexible, sensitive, passionate, with a feeling of uneasiness of wanting to squeeze and suck in the invading foreign object with all its strength, but also afraid of being scratched. The wet hole made squishing sounds as it was rubbed, and Shen Qingqiu's legs were entangled around Luo Binghe's waist, the smooth and slippery inner thighs rubbed his skin, his toes curled up, and his expression was drunk. The aroma of wine was diffused and the wine was strong. Shen Qingqiu was indeed drunk. But before he became so drunk that he would fall unconscious, Luo Binghe woke him up. Luo Binghe supported his arms and got up from the bed. Shen Qingqiu's own weight sank down, and that member immediately pushed down the layers of soft flesh and hit a deeper spot. His heart was about to be pushed out of his throat by this action, as if it were a sharp sword that pierced him, twisting desperately. But he was hugged by the air, and no matter how hard he twisted, it only made the backside and the invading object more closely embedded, causing this evil disciple's thing to swell in his body several more times that he could almost feel him on his throat. Even more terrifying was that in the next moment, Luo Binghe began to walk. This posture allowed Shen Qingqiu to swallow Luo Binghe's member even more deeply. With every step he took, his things remained inside, only changing its angle within his body but always ensured that Shen Qingqiu's backside would be properly stimulated, that it trembled and shrunk as if it was being massaged. Aside from being penetrated deeply up to his throat, he was also afraid that he would fall off. Shen Qingqiu couldn't stand it anymore and haltingly said, "Wait, wait, it's too deep." "Bing! Binghe, put me down." Luo Binghe bit his earlobe and whispered with a slight gasp, "Shizun, it's not deep enough, not enough." Shen Qingqiu's stomach was stuffed full and seemed to be swelling, so he said uncomfortably, "How deep are you going? Where do you want to go?" Luo Binghe hugged him happily and pressed him to the table. Shen Qingqiu's upper body was pressed tightly against the tabletop, his hands were pushed back, and his legs weakly and softly stepped on the ground. His arms were stuck to the edge of the table, making his hole opened wide. The place where Luo Binghe frequently attacked was pressed tightly to the table so that the table was bumped to the point where it swayed non-stop. Shen Qingqiu's face was pressed against the tabletop, feeling that between the two thighs, there was a hard object coming in and out, but he could barely hold on. From the legs to the hips, he was trembling and was almost unable to stand. But Luo Binghe was still holding those snow-white buttocks in both hands, squeezing them towards the middle, enjoying the monstrous pleasure of being clamped by the inner walls and buttocks at the same time. Shen Qingqiu only felt that the foreign object spread a sensation between the thighs that felt like unprecedented torture. His hips were constantly rubbed and slapped, Although it did not hurt, it made him very embarrassed. After a while, Luo Binghe changed position again. Every time he did, he only pulled out a little bit and then pushed back in harder as his buttocks were deformed by his fingers. Shen Qingqiu was lying on the table, the tender and delicate flesh deep in the inner wall was scorched and rubbed thoroughly by both liquid and skill, both painful and itchy that it was driving him crazy, but he was stuck in place, unable to move, and could only take in all of Luo Binghe. Luo Binghe deserved the title of Swiba. Being provided with just the teaching materials, he was able to produce such results that made people overwhelmed. He cried without tears, and whimpered feebly, "You, what else did you see?" End chapter.